Hello, and welcome to Beyond ABM Theory, Building Unified Account Conversation session at Demand Basis 2022 Smart Event. We are super excited to be here. This is going to be a fun session, and what a great event. Thank you, Demand Base team, to sort of having us be present. Quick round of introductions. I'm Uzair Dada. I'm the founder and CEO of Iron Horse. We're a growth marketing agency, a demand-based partner for helping companies drive ABM optimizations and ABM scaling programs. And I have my colleague, Jay Fumiko, who's our Chief Research Officer and also heads up our relationship marketing practice. Jay came from Serious Decisions and Forrester, where he led and guided some of the largest organizations implement ABM programs and MarTech strategies. So super excited to be here and hope you guys find this session useful. What we wanted to sort of start out by talking about is unified account conversations. We all know ABM is everywhere. Our prospects is everywhere. ABM is becoming universal. Everyone in all major organizations have some level of ABM initiatives in place. But if you look at sort of what's happening, we are all selling to companies and accounts. The accounts are made up of a lot of different people who are having conversations and looking up information from us in a lot of different places. For us as marketers, what that means is to drive unified account conversations, we need to build relevant content. We need to be present in the right watering holes that our prospects are at, and we need to connect our data sets to inform the overall conversation arc. And to do that requires a core focus on 4 key areas, which we're going to spend a lot of time on today. So the first area that we want to focus on is that ABM is not a marketing initiative. It's not a sales initiative. It's actually a growth initiative. That means you and ABM marketing teams and sales teams are a single team focused on a single outcome. That means you are data-driven. That means you have common goals. That means you are looking at the same account information. That means you're looking at the same reporting structure, and you're commonly aligned to deliver a unified conversation, unified message from your company to your prospects, wherever they may be. That is very, very, very important. If you don't do that, and it's marketing-led or sales-led, that leads to a very poor prospect and account experience. For example, if it's marketing-led, you can see a prospect getting a lot of marketing information, and at the same time, a lot of sales information could be happening because the two things are not connected. If you are truly aligned, marketing nurture should really inform the sales strategy based on the data you're compiling. So it's really important to make sure that the two things connect for you to drive really good account-based conversations. Next, Jay is going to focus on sort of helping and talk about what does it take to drive that unison in sales and marketing and drive that alignment. Jay.
When we're talking about account-based marketing, we're frequently hearing the term alignment. And we're frequently hearing organizations saying marketing and sales are aligned. And we're having high-level discussions pertaining to account-based marketing. And that's definitely something. But it's not alignment. It's just talk. And in order to be truly aligned as it pertains to ABM, you need to be able to say yes to the following 4 questions I'm going to bring up. It needs to be yes. It can't be no. It can't be yes, but. First one, goals. Do you have shared goals and business objectives for your account-based marketing activities and initiative? Are those goals and objectives mutually shared and agreed upon between marketing and sales leadership? But also, more importantly, are those goals and objectives well understood by the marketing team as a whole, the sales organization as a whole? Now, we have these shared goals and we have these shared business objectives for ABM. Have we gone a level deeper and clarified what are the KPIs, what are the metrics that we're going to be using to evaluate our goals and our business objectives? Are they mutually shared by marketing and sales leadership? Are they widely understood across the entire marketing and sales organization? And well comprehended? So we have our goals, we have our measurement. Third one, do we have clarification of the systems of record? And you'll notice the S at the end of system. It's not system of record. The reason being you're engaging people through multiple applications. And we're going to bring that up on the next slide in terms of what your tech stack looks like. So you're not just engaging them through demand-based or through your marketing automation platform or your CRM system or through chat or through publishers or through any of the other investments in marketing technology and sales technology you have. You're engaging them through all of them. And what that tells me is when we're talking about the KPIs and the measurements and the metrics that we're going to evaluate our goals and business objectives, we have to have clarity in terms of where that's being pulled and what specific dashboard, what specific report or reports we're going to use in order to evaluate it. And the reason it is important to go down to that report level is Uzair and I might have clarity and complete alignment in what the goal and objective is. We have clarity in terms of how absolutely it's going to be measured. When he builds the report in the CRM system and I build the report in the CRM system, the assumptions that he's making may be different from mine. The time frame that he's using may be different from mine. And what's really important about reporting is to ensure that there's continuity between marketing and sales and everyone that's touching the ABM list. And lastly, change management. Do we have consistent touch points between marketing and sales leadership, but also second line marketing staff and then first line sales managers from the sales side in terms of how the ABM initiative is moving forward, what's working, what's not, what needs to shift, and looking at these measurements and metrics and determining how we need to change. That drives alignment because alignment is comprehensive, it's ongoing. It's not something that you just do when you're first kicking off an initiative. We'll often hear organizations talk about ripping and replacing their tech stack for account-based marketing or setting up their tech stack for account-based marketing. And that's essentially myself telling my better half, my wife, saying, we're going to remodel our entire house, every single room. Don't worry, it's not going to be disruptive whatsoever. Realistically, if I did that, my wife would have very harsh words, tell me it's going to take about 7 years, and it's going to be much more complex than I actually think it is. Enter your tech stack. What you're seeing here is a high-level depiction of what a representative tech stack may look like. And we have these nice, clean little boxes. Publishers, content syndication, review sites, social demand gen. Nice and neat. That's not what your tech stack is. Under publishers, you definitely have 3, 4, if not a couple dozen publishers you're working with. Same thing with review sites. G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, Software Review. Social demand gen, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Same thing for display, same thing for PPC. Same thing in terms of what you're doing for virtual events. And all of these different vendors that you're using all have different data schemas. All of them have different levels of integration. Some are very robust and well built. Others are very basic, and some are integrated through interns that are manually passing CSVs back and forth. And this culmination of all these different vendors and different levels of integration, that's what every single marketing program and tactic your organization drives forward with is dependent upon. That's how you plan. That's how you do all of your reporting. And it's unrealistic to think that you're going to rip and replace the entire tech stack. Realistically, you're looking at making 1 or 2 core investments in ABM-specific technology to power your initiative. You're looking at modifying select parts of your business process to better fit it, and perhaps over time, building out your tech roadmap in order to better support account-based marketing. Here's what it tells me. Here's what it absolutely should tell you. As you're defining your ABM strategy, the operations team, marketing ops and sales ops, need to be part of those conversations. And ABM strategy also equals MarTech and sales tech strategy. They're very much tethered together. Now, when we're operationalizing for account-based marketing, using your existing tech stack, plus one or two additional ABM-specific vendors and some slight business process modifications, here are 3 changes that you want to do in order to make sure that you're well-positioned. 3 business process changes. First one, your ABM list. You'll often see many organizations manage that in a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet gets emailed from person to person to person. And all of a sudden it creates this issue of, well, what's our most accurate ABM list? You'll see other organizations use Google Sheets, and that's a step in the right direction, but it's not the step you want to take. Your ABM list needs to be managed within your CRM system. That's where your sales team is managing all of their accounts, all of their prospects, all of their contacts. Also, when you do it and do it correctly, because you will, when an organization is added to your ABM list or removed from your ABM list, it immediately impacts all of your programs. It immediately places the new organization that you added to your ABM list into your ABM tactics and programs by which they're engaged. If you remove them, it also precludes them from receiving them. Second one, use contacts. Don't use leads in your CRM system. Way to think about leads is it's all that business card information. And it's all that business card information essentially think about it as an Excel spreadsheet. Person 1, person 2, person 2, 3, person 4, person 5. There's no affiliation saying, here's an organization, here's all of the different touch points that we have at it. And you don't have to switch over to a complete account and contact basis and kind of kick the leads to the side. But you need to at least do that for your ABM list. Here's why. Think of all that information that you have on the account level. You're going to want to use that for segmentation. You're going to want to use that for personalization. And if you're not using contacts associated to accounts, you can't do that. You might be having conversations about, account scoring. I have no idea how your organization would do that if you're using leads. Well, I do. It's a lot of spreadsheet work, a lot of manual effort. There's a better way, and that better way is using contacts. The other thing is, if we're trying to measure, and you should be thinking of measuring all of the touch points that we're having with accounts, all the engagements that we're having with them. From a reporting perspective, it's going to be a lot easier to do that with contacts associated to accounts versus leads. Last one, implement a traffic cop. Traffic cop, of course, it's a metaphor. Think of a police officer directing traffic at an intersection. Stop, go. Most organizations don't want to have all of their broad-based demand generation tactics and programs impacting organizations that they're engaging through ABM. You need to have a way to prevent them from receiving select engagements from your marketing team. The other thing is we need to have a way to ensure that when we follow up, when we engage with that person, that hand raiser, that we're engaging with them in more of a codified way. We're probably going to want to engage people that are on your ABM list, perhaps with a more senior sales representative. We probably want to engage them, understanding the entire relationship that we're building forward with at their organization versus just their one individual touch point. That traffic cop does that. Typically, it's a field-based value that you'd have on the individual account or on the contact level that you can easily query off of. And then that one individual field-based value kind of traverses, kind of scales across all of the different applications in your MarTech stack.
So now that we've talked about sales and marketing alignments, we talked about, hey, it takes a sustained effort to make sure it works. You talk about the ABM stack sort of is built on top of your existing stack, and that the more interconnected we are, the better it is. Let's talk about using that tech stack and using those decisions that we just talked about to actually drive unified conversations. And the question that comes to mind is, why do I need to be multi-channel? What does unified conversation really mean? And some really interesting stats. Just read a recent December 21 McKinsey study that when they did research on B2B sales process, the number of touch points that prospects and accounts engage in to connect with a company they're buying from went from 5 in 2016 to 7.5 in 2019 to 10 in 2021. Incredible. It's incredible, but if you think about it, not that hard, because when we're researching, we're jumping around, we're talking, we're getting and talking to person, we're talking to peers, we're in communities. Those are all the different places where people are consuming information. Another interesting fact from a recent Forrester B2B buyer study was that the number of digital touchpoints, the number of total touchpoints, increased from 17 pre-COVID to 27 during COVID. Incredible number, right? So again, we're like, okay, we don't have events, we are not meeting with people. Makes sense in a lot of ways. From an ABM perspective, the number jumped from number of people in an account engaged in the buying process 2 years ago was about 47% of the organizations had 4 or more people. Today, 64%. It's pretty incredible if you think about that. So that's sort of the core point, that if you think about the different stages of your buying cycle, and you think about the channels which are your y-axis and your stages on the x-axis, the different bubbles that you're seeing that come up are the different personas within an account that you have that are showing up at different times through different channels. That information is happening, that action is happening, regardless of whether you're trying to intercept it and utilize it to your advantage. One of the reasons we love demand-based and use it for a lot of our customers is the ability for us to connect a lot of things to help drive intent and to drive those unified conversations. Being able to connect my MOPS and CRM systems, being able to connect my review sites, being able to connect my social platforms, and be able to now drive a unified message across those, being able to drive that intent across those channels and share with the sales team. The sales team now understands what's happened. There's nothing more annoying when a prospect or an account has done all their discovery and consideration processes when they've come to you, and you have a very rigid sales process that is taking them back to ground zero. Very, very annoying in the process, in the cycle. So using those platforms, using platforms like Demandbase to further the conversation, using the platforms, ABM platforms, to understand multi-level intent, connecting the dots like review sites where you're able to see which companies are looking at you and looking at your competitors, which companies are only looking at you, which companies are looking at your competitors and not looking at you. You can now take that information and have a more humanized, more personalized and pertinent and relevant conversation with your prospects. That is what makes it important. So utilize this information, utilize these platforms, connect your dots, and make sure that you're using the intent data and connectedness of ABM platforms to your advantage, and using that to drive and at least point to a North Star of having that unified conversation. You may never get there, or you may get there 50, 60%, but you're moving in the right direction.
So how do we know if account-based marketing is working for your organization or not? And how do you prove that? And I shouldn't say prove, but how do you communicate the value of it? And the benefit with ABM is there's hundreds of reports and dashboards and hundreds of analytics that you can use. The challenge with ABM is there's hundreds of reports and hundreds of dashboards you can use. And honestly, like, where should one start? And what we did talking about that North Star that Uzair just referenced, here's our North Star. Here are the first 5 reports you really should be moving forward with. Not the only 5 reports, but definitely the first 5. First one, a report that shows here's all of the organizations that we're defining as being in our ABM account list. That drives alignment. This drives comprehension in terms of what our ABM strategy is and what type of organizations are included or not included. And you also see filtered by here. We don't want to just have it overall aggregate for our organization, and many times that can be overwhelming many organizations. Being able to thin slice it by a rep, by a first-line sales manager, by a particular region or industry. Intent data. I think of this as my demand-based report. This is going to show us, and this is going to give us insight in terms of where each of our ABM accounts is at in terms of interest area. Are they in market or are they not in market? When I message, when I communicate to them, what will most likely resonate with them? ABM dossier. And you're going to have this for each and every one of your ABM accounts. This is saying, this is who the account is. Here's who we view to be in the buying unit. The people you definitely should be engaging with. Here's all the touch points that we've had with this organization thus far and how they've engaged with us. Here's how we're trying to message to them. And what I mean by trying to message to them is if you're a larger organization, you likely have multiple solutions and multiple products that you can bring to bear. You're not going to pitch them all to the organization at once. What are you going with first? What are you going with secondly? And by the way, how you're pitching and how you're positioning and how you're talking likely will be, and very much will be, driven by who in the buying center you're engaging. Sales motions. I think of this as what activities the sales organization is driving forward with. For each organization, I want to be able to see how many at-bats did we have, how many emails were sent, how many outbound telephone calls were made, how many first or intro meetings that we had. I want to see how we're trying to engage the organization, what the sales organization is doing. And what that report powers is a planned versus actual. If I could only do 2 reports out of these ones here, ABM list first, planned versus actual second. Planned versus actual is saying, here's what we agreed upon and committed to doing over the next, over the last quarter or 2 quarters out. Marketing, you're doing these 3 account-specific webinars. You're creating these topical assets. You're committing to driving a certain number of engagements with contacts at those ABM accounts. What did we actually do? What did we actually achieve? Sales. You committed to X number of first meetings with the accounts. How many were actually achieved? And if we think of leading versus lagging indicators, those are all leading ones. Are we taking the right motions? Are we doing the right activities? Lagging ones, that's conversions, that's pipelines, that's sales. Here's what we thought the ABM initiative was going to drive. Here's what actually occurred. And we want to look at that in combination with what we're actually planning to do to support the ABM initiative versus what we actually did. And the reason that this plan versus actual is very impactful is for many organizations, you're flexing muscles that you previously haven't used. You're marketing in a different way that you're not used to. You're engaging prospects in a way that the sales organization is unaccustomed to. And this is an effective way to make sure that everyone's going in the right direction. And if there needs to be course corrections, we have clarity of what occurred versus what didn't occur.
Awesome. Oops. So the final sort of wrap-up thoughts today are, we talked about sales and marketing alignment. Key thing there to take away here is it's a sustained effort. Change management is key. We talked about sort of your ABM doesn't rip and replace, your ABM builds upon your existing tech stack. So make sure you utilize the Ferraris that you have in your garage and you drive them. ABM supercharges them. We all talked about the reason for multi-channel, multi-tactic strategy, because our accounts are made up of buying teams. They're everywhere, using ABM platforms like Demandbase, connecting the dots, using the intent data across platforms to talk to them. And lastly, it is all about a single goal, a single North Star that sales and marketing teams have, that we are all working towards. Hence, we need to have common reporting. Hope this session was useful and you found it kind of informative and actionable. Please reach out to us if you haven't already done so during the Q&A chat, but also afterwards, reach out to us and connect to us through any of the channels. We really enjoyed the session. And again, thank you to Demandbase team for having us here.